Hi, guys. It's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. So, we're going to day 9 p.m. today, which gets us even closer to day 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Um, so we'll be officially past the midpoint of this trial once you're done with this video. And this trial today, the PM, we have part of it is the trial, and then the last portion is going to be the media request. So I don't know if any media went to the site when the jurors went. I didn't look to see if it was on any news stations or anything. But we're going to see the media request after we get through with, I think, cross-examination today. So if you're new and you haven't seen any of the trial yet, um, it's really hard to summarize everything because we've been through so much together already. But you should definitely check out Wanda because she was great. The opening statement by the defense attorney was outstanding. Now, for the rest of the trial, all the lawyers are annoying. They just are. They repeat, repeat, repeat constantly. Um, I think this trial could have been 2 or 3 days. But anyway, so if you're new, just go back to the first video or something. I can summarize it a little bit. A man and his wife bought a house near the border of Mexico, and one day they saw people walking on their property 150 yards away from their house. He says he fired warning shots from an AR style rifle, but later on that day they found someone was passed away, unalived. So he's on trial for this right now. So that's where we're at. Here we go.
Please. Is that stuff bothering you? Is that stuff bothering you?
Please rise.
Thank you. Everyone, please be seated. Doesn't look like any of the jurors got blown away by the wind over lunchtime. I've never seen wind like that before. I was totally unprepared for it when I walked in. Anyway, all the jurors are present. Thank you. And the counsel and the defendant is present. Ms. Lothorpe was in cross-examination of the witness, who's on the witness stand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to clarify one more thing. That's it. And it was something that was quoted yesterday. You were talking about what Mr. Kelly said, and you told the jurors that he said it happened after you left, referencing the shot, I'm sure, okay? Do you remember saying that yesterday?
What was the statement again?
It happened after you left, referencing the shot or the killing of the deceased.
Yes, he said that.
Okay, but in your report, you also noted that he said he thought it happened, that he said he thought it happened after you left. You left out the word thought yesterday, correct?
From my statement to my report, is that the question?
In your report, your statement was, in the report, that Mr. Kelly said he thought it happened after you left, but in your testimony, you said Mr. Kelly said it happened after you left. That sort of changes the meaning a little bit, correct?
I don't recall leaving that statement out, but
Okay. Well, I got clarity now. You're not denying that he said he thought it happened.
yes.
Okay. And you are aware that in the first visit to his home by law enforcement earlier in the day, that they had spread out and searched the property. And so is there any reason to believe that's why he thought it had to happen after that first visit? Would that be rational thinking?
I don't understand the
Mr.
question.
Kelly sorry about that, I didn't mean to cut you off. Mr. Kelly was aware that his property was being searched by law enforcement, Border Patrol, sheriffs, whoever was out there in the fields checking and looking for anything that could be pertinent, bodies, people, suspects of the initial shooting. So the fact that he knew everyone combed this area and now there's a dead body in the same area, isn't that reason to believe for him to speculate that maybe it happened after law enforcement left earlier?
When the deputies were there earlier, I will be guessing to point out what they were looking for, because the call was not to search for a body. It was to search for, again, the active shooter that they had reported initially.
Okay,
I
that
will be
is,
guessing if they were searching for an actual body out there.
well, and you're referencing a dead body, but a body is someone that could be shooting, right? A person is a body, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And so they were searching, and then he commented, this must have happened after,
Right.
because he knows that law enforcement was there on his property looking before. Would be a reasonable comment, but you brought it up yesterday. I just wanted to bring clarity. So knowing that, does it seem more reasonable?
The way you're painting it, yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Nothing further. Pass the witness.
Redirect examination.
He's a great
you, Anna.
witness.
Detective, we talked quite a bit on cross-examination about securing the scene for a search warrant. Can you tell me, first of all, let's talk about the property. How remote is the property?
It is isolated from other or nearby residences in the area of the Kino Springs Village, as we refer to it. It is a remote area. I will be guessing to tell you the distance between the other houses, but it is quite a distance from other structures.
Is the property fenced, if you know?
I did see a fence around the actual house. I did not see any other fences on farther away from the house.
You weren't looking for that, is that fair to say?
Yes,
Did you see a gate when you came in?
there was a gate, yes.
Fair to say that there aren't crowds of people milling about on the Kelly property?
Not that I saw any.
So when you secured the scene, who were you securing the scene? Who were you concerned about securing the scene from or involving?
At that point, from the subjects, I had made contact with Mr. Kelly and thinking that Ms. Kelly could have been inside as well.
Okay. And so can you tell the jury what the process is when you believe you have the appropriate amount of information to request a search warrant? What is the process that you go through when you secure a scene for that search warrant?
The process of securing a scene will be to, in this example, a house and then the surrounding property. If I have enough reasonable suspicion to believe that a crime occurred, I have the authority to, again, seize, which means seize any movement from persons going into the property, which potentially could destroy evidence, hide evidence. So at that point, that was my main focus, to make sure that no one went into the property or, I'm sorry, the home itself. and that we didn't have anyone roaming around the surrounding of the structure trying to hide or tamper with evidence.
You were out at the scene that night, is that right?
Yes,
Was it cold?
it was cold, yes.
And who makes the ultimate determination on whether there's enough evidence to search a residence?
The ultimate, the ultimate authority that can authorize the search of the interior will be a judge.
So you're not the one who makes the determination of whether to seek a search warrant, is that right?
To seek the search warrant?
Right.
In that particular case, no, it was not my determination.
You just secure the scene because you think that someone else might want to get one.
Objection, sorry. Objection leading.
Sustain. Sustain.
Do you secure the scene so that someone else can make that determination?
That is part of my job, yes.
And is that what you did in this case?
Yes.
Let's talk for a second about the backpack. If you don't mind grabbing some gloves and taking a look in the backpack. And without showing it to the jury, would you take a look at that T-shirt that originally you weren't able to identify? And if you'd look at both sides of the T-shirt. Did you get a good look at it? Could you take a look at, and if I could have the screen, please, I'm showing you what's been already admitted. Image number 46. Was it 116? I think 116, Your Honor. Exhibit 116. Could you take a look on the screen? Do you recognize that item now that you've looked in the? Okay. Okay, is that the same T-shirt? So is there any missing
We gotta get
T-shirt?
him, we gotta get him to the microphone.
Oh, sure, microphone. Is that the same T-shirt? Yes, it looks like it. Oh, and I think it's not turned on.
Yes, the item in the backpack seems as the item in the photograph, which is, I remember seeing it. No,
So we're not missing a T-shirt?
no,
And we don't have an extra T-shirt?
no.
Okay, thank you. And how can you tell that that's the same T-shirt, by the way, since you're there?
The lettering, the, everything in the front is the same T-shirt. Again, yesterday was folded, so.
And I'm sorry that you took your gloves off because I have one more question for you while you're there with the backpack. My apologies. And if you could just zip that up now. No, just zip it up if you would. And if you would hold it up and examine the straps, no, don't put it away. If you'd hold it up and examine the straps that go around the waist. Do those straps appear to be cut in any way?
No.
Does there appear to be
No.
any damage?
Not visibly, no.
If the deceased person, if Gabriel had had that buckle attached at his waist, what would you have done to remove the backpack?
What I did with the other straps, probably cut it.
Okay, and did you cut it?
No.
So does that tell you anything about whether those straps were attached?
It indicates that maybe they were not attached.
Okay, and if they were not attached, what would that mean with respect to how the backpack could move if it falls to the ground?
It would move freely without being attached to the waist.
Thank you. You can have a seat now. Thank you very much. On cross-examination, I don't think you ever got to give a full answer about why you determined you needed to secure the scene when you had folks ask Ms. Kelly to step out of her house. Could you tell us why you secured the scene at that point?
At that point, based on what I observed, again, the dead person, the injury to the body, the statements made in the earlier call, the position of the body in comparison to the house, the comments made by other deputies who were there, that there was a rifle involved in the previous call, the injury that led me to believe that the person that died in that location, it was a consequence of a homicide. I don't think he died there naturally. So at that point, there was a death investigation. And in training, we treat every death as a homicide until we can prove otherwise.
And what was important about securing the residence if you believed that a homicide had happened in the location where you found you found Gabriel's body, the deceased person?
Again, we try to control as much of the environment to prevent the destruction of evidence and or the tampering with any evidence that might be in the property at that point.
I want to ask you a little bit about some of the photographs that council showed you earlier. She asked you about what the area was like in terms of the grass, and she showed you a photograph. Can I see OO and KK, council?
Judge, don't leave. Come on back. Sit down. If we have to stay here, you have to stay here. Remember when she specifically asked her not to mix up all the evidence, not evidence, maybe evidence, and she was like, oh, I have them organized. I have them in folders. Shouldn't they each have their own copy of the evidence? Like all the evidence? Nope, she lost it. Look under your chair. Try there.
This is not a good use of our time. Let's look for that and we'll come back to it and do something else.
Sure, Judge.
Thank you.
And this is from XX, right? Do you recall this photograph that council showed you earlier and asked you about the grass and the area around the deceased person?
Yes.
Could I have the screen on my laptop now, please? And I'm showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 116, Image 37. Is that a photograph that shows what the grass was like in the area?
Yes.
And also Image 38?
Yes.
So was there any indication in all that high grass that there had been any kind of struggle with people that ended up with the defendant or with the decedent laying there in the grass?
No.
Any indication of dragging in that grass?
No.
Any indication of like a blood trail or anything like that?
No.
Now, we looked at the jacket to talk about with co-counsel and or with the defense counsel, and she asked you about the hole that you saw in the jacket. Is that right?
Yes.
And you said that that isn't how you recalled the jacket. Is that right?
Correct.
And I'm showing you now what's been admitted as States Exhibit 116, Image 39. Is this what you observed when you walked up to the body?
Yes.
Did you have to move the backpack or the fanny pack to see this view?
No.
When you approached the body, is this what you saw?
Yes.
And I want to walk through with you what you did when you approached the body. First of all, what was your primary focus when you approached the body out on property?
Again, confirm that the person didn't need any medical aid. I just cannot take somebody's word for saying somebody's dead. I need to make sure that they don't need help.
Have you ever resuscitated anyone during your job?
Many times, yes.
So when you get to that person, have you found people who weren't breathing, who didn't have a pulse?
Yes.
And did you bring them back to life?
There's been 2 times that has happened, yes.
Okay. And so when you approached this body, I think you said that the first thing you noticed was that that the person was not breathing. Is that right?
Yes.
And tell the jury again what the first thing is that you observed and what you did after you observed that the person wasn't breathing.
When I noticed the person wasn't breathing, I didn't see any rising of the chest or torso at this point. I went immediately to don gloves, check on the neck to see if I could find a pulse, touch part of the cheek, notice the stiffness in the jaw and the coldness. At this point, I'm still, again, questioning, is this person really dead? I checked the arm, still no pulse. Again, I feel stiffness, coldness, and trying to help him. I lifted the shoulder, to see if there was any sort of breathing, and that's when I saw the blood underneath. And that moment I ceased or stopped touching him and made the determination that in fact he was dead, and I couldn't do anything else to help him.
What were you thinking as you went through this process?
I'm thinking, do I have to render aid? Do I have to provide CPR? Is he just unconscious? And maybe it's one of those situations where I've gotten, again, to different medical aid scenes where I have to render aid and provide CPR. So it was a hard decision to move him or not move him at that point, because I had in my mind, do I have to preserve evidence? Do I have to move him and help him? So it was a hard decision to make at that point.
And you talked about feeling cold spots on the body. Were any of the parts of the body warm?
There was warm parts of the body, which is the torso, shoulder area. It was warmer than the extremities, in this case, the arms and the jaw.
And you were able to feel that through your gloves?
Yes.
And you talked about the blood stain you saw here. What were your thoughts about the blood stain you observed, and how you talked a little bit about gravity and what you observed with respect to that? Could you tell us that, please?
What I thought is when I saw the person laying down, the blood stain on the right side, and then blood under going towards the bottom of the chest, my belief at that point was that the person was either when he fell down, he never moved again, because blood again follows gravity. We would have seen blood somewhere else, either in the back, upper back. So my belief was that when he was injured, fell down, the blood followed the gravity, and that's the position. He never moved again.
There is some blood higher than the wound, though, is that right?
Towards the armpit area.
And is that something that you would normally observe in this kind of situation, where the blood dissipates from around the wound?
It is normal for fabric to absorb any fluid or liquid. In this case, it was the blood.
And counsel talked about the jacket and preserving that evidence. What would you have had to do to the jacket if you wanted it to be in exactly the same state it was while you were at the scene?
Never touch it.
And how would you get the body to the morgue if you didn't roll the body?
It will be impossible. I will have to touch him and move him.
And you have to put him in a body bag, is that right?
Yes.
Do you know, and this is only if you know, do you know if Santa Cruz County has a contract with the Pima County Medical Examiner's Office to send their death investigation scene to our crime scenes?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Yeah, I've got it, never mind. Counsel asked you if there was another person at this location, wouldn't you necessarily have seen footprints? Can you tell me, is it possible that there was another person at the scene that you wouldn't have seen footprints?
Could you repeat that question?
Sure. Could there have been another person here and you didn't see the footprints?
That's a possibility.
Counsel asked you about image 43 and exhibit 116. Can you tell me what you meant when you talked about the baseball cap that you observed here.
When I saw this, the individual face down and the baseball cap in front of his forehead, the bill of the cap in front of his forehead, the position of the backpack, that led me to believe, again, when I was watching the body, that led me to believe that the person had collapsed face down, being that his arm was extended out, his face was directly in the dirt. That made me believe that he had collapsed without even bracing himself, which caused probably the backpack to move with the momentum or the force as bodies falling down without even putting his hands out to brace.
And was that consistent with what you saw with respect to the face implanted in the dirt?
Yes.
And you just talked about how the body was positioned. Do you have exhibit SS? And counsel talked to you about the positioning of the body. So I want to get to the pictures on the positioning of the body. Can you see in this photograph how the right arm is positioned in Exhibit 116, image 39?
Yes.
And does that show what you were talking about with respect to how the arm was positioned in front of the body, the right
Yes.
arm?
Yes.
And image number 40, does that also show that?
Yes.
Is there anything about that that indicates that this arm was lower? Or does it substantiate what you said about how the arm was folded in front of the body?
There's nothing that indicated that he was, that the hand was down to the groin area.
And then you mentioned how the left arm is out, and you can sort of see it in this picture, image number 44. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is that how the arm was extended that you described earlier?
Yes.
And can you also see the arm extended in image number
Aren't we
45?
just going over what we've gone over before on direct examination?
Judge, I'm reviewing what counsel asked him about with respect and questioned him about with respect to the way the body was positioned. And
Right.
so, but I'll move on if the court would like.
I understand, but redirect is not for the purpose of repeating what he said earlier on direct examination. You're free to argue it at closing argument, remind the jury what he said on his direct, but it's not just to rehash things that were covered in direct examination again. So with that in mind, you can ask your next question.
Counsel asked you about some photographs from the autopsy that showed dirt and debris on his hand and whether the hand was grasping. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury where you believe the dirt and debris that was on his hand came from?
Probably from the scene, there's brush and dirt there. So.
Did you roll over the body when you had it at the scene?
We did.
And I'm showing you exhibits, image 66 from exhibit 116. Is this the photograph that you have that documents the debris on the hand?
Yes.
And is this just after you rolled the body?
Correct.
Is there anything in this picture that indicates this person had somehow grabbed grass, or does this picture indicate something different?
I don't see any indication of that particular picture where he's grabbing something.
And I want to make sure that the roles that you play in an investigation are clear. counsel asked you a lot of questions about why you didn't do this particular thing or that particular thing. When you are the first responder at the scene, what is your role at the scene?
In this particular incident, my role was to first render aid, find out that there's no one is in danger. Once the scene is secure and I assess and determine that there's no need of immediate help, at that point I have to slow things down and make sure that the proper division, in this case investigators, come in with more time and take care of the rest of the investigation.
Who's in charge of making the decisions in a case?
In the actual case,
Yes.
everything will probably fall under the sergeant assigned to the Criminal Investigations Division.
And that would not be you, correct?
No.
And tell us again, you have some experience in detectives, is that right?
Yes.
So when you're at a scene, do you have experience with working homicide scenes?
Death scenes, yes.
How many death scenes do you think you've attended?
In my tenure, over close to 30 that I've investigated and taken directly, and I've assisted other deputies in processing the scene of other death investigations as well, which I don't have a number at this point.
When you were heading toward the body with Mr. Kelly and Deputy Lopez, can you tell the jury what happened with the dogs?
As we were walking, when we started walking around the gate and walked along the fence line, there was a point where the dogs separated from us and they continued towards where the flashlight was.
Do you know if the dogs had been at the scene before you arrived?
I don't know that.
And counsel asked you some specific questions about what Mr. Kelly said when you first were approaching the scene. And you indicated in your report that you had some concerns about him mentioning rigor. Is that right?
Yes.
What was it about him mentioning rigor that you thought was something important to the investigation?
Again, it was a statement not commonly used by a civilian or a regular person that doesn't work in law enforcement. We use it a lot when it comes to stiffness and rigidity of a person. And again, that made me think that if he knows that rigor has set in, that he was already with the body and touched him at one point.
And was there anything about other statements he made that also caused you concern with respect to him telling you about rigor?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. These are questions that have been already asked and answered.
Your Honor, counsel went over this extensively in cross.
It doesn't matter. I mean, if he's testified to it before on direct examination, there's no need and it's not proper to repeat it now. So if unless it's something new that he hasn't said before that is responsive to cross-examination, it's just cumulative.
Did you consider
Sustained.
did
So
you
ask another
consider
question.
this statement in a vacuum, or did you consider it in combination with other factors?
All my decisions made or determinations were based on the totality of different statements and factors added together.
Now, counsel also asked you about why Mrs. Kelly wasn't offered to sit in her own vehicle. When you secure a residence and a scene, does that generally include the vehicles?
It includes anything surrounding the property, and it also is an officer's safety problem because I don't know what's inside the vehicle, what access they will have inside the vehicle. And again, I don't know the individual, so I have to take precautions for my safety, the safety of my officers, and their safety as well. So that's one of the reasons we secure people in a location that it's neutral to them.
council asked you some questions about whether it would be unreasonable for Mr. Kelly, whether it would be reasonable for Mr. Kelly to call Border Patrol instead of 911 if that had been his practice. Do you recall that?
Yes.
I want to ask you if Border Patrol had specifically told him to call 911 and he didn't call 911, do you think that would be reasonable?
The question is, if Border Patrol is directing him to call 911 and he doesn't, is that unreasonable?
Yes.
That is unreasonable, yes.
Council asked you some questions about how your territories overlap with Border Patrol. So I want to just clarify what your duties are. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Yes.
Can you tell me, is it the Sheriff's Department's primary duty or is it Border Patrol's primary duty to investigate homicides?
It would fall under the jurisdiction of the sheriff's office.
How about shootings?
I think it would depend on the circumstances as well.
If someone shoots at someone, that would not be a Sheriff's Department investigation?
It will be a sheriff's department investigation unless there's a federal agent involved directly.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So if there's not a federal agent involved in the shooting, then it would be a Sheriff's Department investigation?
Yes.
Trespassing, would that be a Sheriff's Department investigation or a federal investigation?
It's a state violation. That's sheriff's office.
That's all I had. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness from any of the members of the jury? We do have more than one. So.
You want to guess if they're asking about body position? The judge could try a little harder to get this rolling. I mean, I understand at first when he wasn't really sure about their styles. He was trying to, let them do their thing. But by now, he's pretty sure now that all they do is ask and answer the same questions over and over. So he needs to step up his game. I just think it's hilarious that this one said, "Oh, no, objection, asked and answered repeatedly." Come on. You've been doing that same thing this whole trial. I wonder when George is going to get on the stand. Oh, Wanda's getting candy from her purse. What do you think? I'm getting candy right now. You need to chew on some candy to stay awake. We just had a nice stream with sign language. I learned court 14. Who's this? Hold on. Who's this one? Has he been here before? I do not recognize him. I do not recognize her guy. Her guy's not here. I don't know who this is. This guy we've seen before, but we don't know who he is. Think he's here to support? Oh, maybe. Oh, look at him. Brother? You think it's his brother? If it was his brother, he would be sitting next to Wanda, right? And Leslie, did she ever find Exhibit KK? Or is it just gone now? She lost it. Judge is still reading the question. He's getting involved. He's telling him something. Finally. She looks mad. I don't want to fast forward it because it's not easily done, but we're going to. Headphones. No headphones.
All right, we have questions from 3 jurors. The way this works is I ask the questions, you do your best to answer, and then the lawyers can ask follow-up questions. All right. Well, one question from juror number 3 about whether there you are, certain items were found that you're asking about, rifles and backpacks and stuff. We're not going to ask that question because this is not a witness who would have an awareness of that, okay? Your question was asking whether any of these particular items that you referenced in your question was found during the cursory search, as I understand it, and we don't believe this witness can.
No, I think the question was, a witness testified that 2 individuals were seen toting bags and rifles. And the question to the officer here was, since he was one of the first individuals to arrive on the scene, when they were doing a cursory check, did they stumble across any of the packages? That was the question.
Okay, now that you've clarified that, let me talk to the lawyers a bit. All right, we'll be right back.
Just let him answer that question. He either knows or does not know.
Okay, so you heard what this juror said, and we just want to, well, let me clarify with you, sir. We were a little confused about the word cursory search. There was been testimony that in the afternoon, law enforcement officers went out there and did what they did, right? This witness was not there then, so you're not referring to that time? He went out the second time after.
Did the sheriff, did the law enforcement people, at any time after the matter was reported like that, found those large tote bags possibly carrying contraband? That was the question.
All right, well, we'll ask the question in this context. He went out, he can testify to what he knows about when he went out there. So, fair enough. So when you went out there, as you described, late in the afternoon, early evening, given where you went and where you were during the time on this property, during your part of the investigation, did you ever see backpacks, large bundles or backpacks that could have been laden with contraband or any rifles in that area? Where you were, the time where you were out there?
No, I did not.
Okay. Another question, if you could explain what is Operation Stone Garden?
Operation Stone Garden is it's the name for the federal grant, and that is provided by FEMA, which is Department of Homeland Security organization. They assist border towns, and I think it goes all the way up to Pinal County. They assist them with funds, so patrolmen or officers assist with patrolling the rural areas of the counties.
So it's federal compensation for law enforcement officers from rural counties, maybe up to Pinal County, to provide funding for them to, in addition to their usual pay for providing those services. Is that right?
That is correct,
Fair enough.
yes.
All right, thank you. Another question from another juror. Does your agency use body cameras, and were any body cameras worn, to your knowledge, on January 30th, 2023?
Unfortunately, at this point, we don't have body cameras, no.
Another question from the same juror who believes that the medical examiner's case file, which you're not familiar with, but somebody testified about that earlier this week. And there was some indication that Deputy Lopez pronounced the time of death. Who pronounced the victim deceased?
That will be myself. I was the person examining the body.
Another question from the same juror. When you arrived on the scene and you saw the deceased, was his fanny pack broken and to his right side when you arrived on the scene?
When the question broken, what does that mean?
Well, I think it's referring to the strap.
I didn't see
The strap and the buckle, right?
right. I didn't see the buckle. I saw the fanny pack laying next to the body on the right side. The strap going up towards the backpack. However, I do not know how the strap was attached to the backpack. I do not know that.
But was the strap and the buckle on the fanny pack broken or not broken at that time?
I don't remember. At this point, I will be guessing if I say it was broken or not, because I do not remember examining the actual buckle.
All right. Another question from a different juror, and I marked this number 3. Regarding the photos of Gabrielle, the victim, is there any indication that the deceased had been pulled by backpack straps or by fanny pack by a horse?
No indication of that. I didn't see any of that.
Very well. Those are the questions from the juror. Juror number 3, we did our best to answer your particular question. So
The question was answered, Your Honor. Thank you.
very well. Thank you. Okay. Let me give these questions to the clerk and follow-up questions from counsel, starting with the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think the juror asked not just about the backpacks, but also about rifles. Did you see any backpacks or rifles anywhere on the scene when you arrived that day?
No.
If you had seen a backpack or a rifle, would you have collected that and made note of it?
More than likely, yes.
Another juror asked about the fanny pack. So can I, if I can have the projector, Your Honor, Exhibit 116. I'm showing you image, what's been admitted as image 24. I see a photograph here with the fanny pack along the side of the body. Is that how the fanny pack was positioned when you arrived?
Yes.
And the other question I have is, it appears that the strap to the fanny pack is somehow up through something. Do you recall whether it was attached to anything or how it was held in that position?
I don't remember how it was. Again, it was through the backpack, but I don't recall how it was attached to it.
So you don't know if it was hooked on or if it was just being held on by the pressure?
Correct.
And when that fanny pack, okay, I think that's all I had, Your Honor. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. Is there Was there any indication that this body had been dragged at all by anything, a horse or a person or anything that you observed?
Nothing that indicated to me that, no.
And was there some dirt in some area near this body? Was there a little bit of dirt? Like, we see a lot of grass, but is there a little bit of dirt areas as well?
There are areas of dirt, yes.
And in those dirt areas, because it would have been difficult to see in the grass areas, I imagine, did you see any indication of dragging?
No.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Defense.
Thank you. If the fanny pack was on the chest and someone was trying to take it off the chest, is it possible it would have got caught up with a backpack on the back?
Again, I don't know where the fanny pack was when the person.
I gave you a hypothetical, if it was on the chest, carried that way, and therefore pulled off, breaking the buckle, is it possible that some of the straps are caught up in the backpack?
I will be guessing, ma'am. I don't know.
In
where
your
the backpack-
opinion, do you think it's possible?
Could you rephrase the question again, please?
I'm gonna stand up. We have a picture in evidence of him wearing a fanny pack on the chest, assuming it was the same way. If someone was trying to take it off, busting the buckle, is it possible, based on this picture and your observation, that it got caught up with the backpack straps?
This picture right here?
Okay,
You're talking about a picture that I haven't seen. That's why I'm asking. Is this the picture you're talking about, ma'am?
let's say it again. Just visualize what I'm, telling you, okay? All right.
I like.
There is a photo we've seen that, I know you haven't, but we have,
Okay,
where this man right here, our deceased, is carrying the backpack or the fanny pack on his chest.
okay.
Backpack would be on the back, right? If he was laying down and you were trying to tug at it to get it out for any reason, okay? Is it possible that the straps could have got caught up in the backpack straps?
Based on the theory you're giving me, yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the cooperation on that. Now, going back to the search,
Objection, Your Honor. She is insufferable.
your search included right around the body. You didn't leave the body because you're protecting the crime scene, right?
Correct.
You're just looking around the immediate area.
Yes.
Did anyone comb the area again for any other evidence, like do a sweep on your watch?
On my watch?
Yes,
no,
sir.
No.
And it got dark pretty quickly, didn't it?
Pretty close to the time that we arrived, yes. It was dusk. Yes.
Right, and that's why the flashlight was hanging in the tree to help you find it, right?
Correct.
Okay, nothing further.
Any other questions for this witness from any members of the jury? One more. Very well.
I feel like we're over the hump of the boring parts and the good parts are coming. But what if I'm just sitting here waiting? And this pettiness and insufferableness is as good as it gets. It's fine though. This is entertaining. Let's see if I can fast forward this through the headsets. I don't think they have it on there. They have it on there.
Fanny pack, but it is separate. We just want to make sure we have the image that you're referring to since you're a little uncertain. This is, what's on the screen now is image number 39. Is this the image you're referring to? Okay, we just want to make sure we have the right one. All right, let's go back here.
Yo, stop wasting my time. I could be sleeping right now. I can't tell. No headsets. There's a headset there. I'm just gonna wait. I think they're almost done.
Another question. There is blood on the fanny pack, but it is separated from the body. Why would that be? And see image number 39, which is the image we're looking at. So the question is, there's blood on the fanny pack, but it is separated from the body. Why would that be? And if it helps you, if you need to, you can look at the actual original item of evidence, the fanny pack as well. It's up to you.
I do see a stain. There's some arrows. Is that yeah? There's a stain. However, I wouldn't be able to answer why there's, if it's blood, I don't know, but I don't know why that will be there, to be honest.
Thank you. Follow-up question to that question of the juror from the state.
Your Honor, I'd just like the witness to take a look at the actual fanny pack too and see if you make any observations about that as well.
Very well. Any objection to that? Ms. Lothrop, any objection to that?
I'm sorry.
That's right.
No, no, sir.
All right, thank you.
Do you see anything on the fanny pack, I guess is my question to you.
I don't see anything that will indicate to me that it's blood.
You can't tell?
No.
Okay, and then you can go have a seat if you like. Thank you. Were you aware, at least of one occasion, that Mr. Kelly's dogs were near the fanny pack?
Can you repeat that question?
Sure, well, near the body. Are you aware of at least one occasion that Mr. Kelly's dogs were near the body?
At least one, yes.
Is there food inside that fanny pack?
There was some items of what appeared to be food, yes.
Thank you.
Defense, any questions?
No, sir.
Very well. Any other questions for this witness from any members of the jury? Seeing none, sir, you can step down. Thank you. And state can call its next witness.
Officer Pacheco.
Valeria?
I'm going to miss him. I liked him.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Thank you, sir. If you'd come over here to the witness stand and have a seat, please.
Do you think we're going to get a witness that the insufferable defense attorney shakes up? Yeah, I think we will.
All right, and whenever you're ready, Mr. Jetty.
Good afternoon, officer. Can you briefly introduce yourself by stating your name for the jury?
I'm Abraham Pacheco. I am a sergeant for the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office.
Sergeant Pacheco, can you spell your last name for the court reporter?
Pacheco.
And Officer Pacheco, or Sergeant Pacheco, how long have you been with the Sheriff's Department?
I've been with the Sheriff's Department since 2008.
2008. And walk us through just high level your career path with the department.
I started as a correction officer in 2008. So I graduated the police academy. I did patrol for 3 years. Then I was reassigned to a federal task force as a narcotics detective. I did that approximately about almost 8 years. In December of 2022, I got promoted to sergeant and I'm back on patrol again.
Sergeant, how were you called to get involved in this investigation?
I was called in to come in early and help with the investigation on what was gonna transpire and what, in case they needed help with anything.
What time was that approximately?
I believe it was 1900 hours, more or less.
7 o'clock for,
7 o'clock.
and do you remember what day? What, not day, necessarily the day of the week, but the day of the year,
2023,
the day though.
30. No, I'm sorry. January 30.
Would it be January 30th? Would that ring a bell?
Yes, January
Okay.
30.
January 3rd, 2023. Do you remember what location you responded to?
It's 100 Willow Crossing Road.
Okay. And obviously, do you know who the defendant is in this case?
Yes, I do.
Do you know, did you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Can you point him out for us?
See,
Just give me a brief description of what he's wearing.
can I stand up so I can see?
Sure. That's not standing up though. but-
No, I'm just waiting for it.
Oh.
He's wearing a brown belt with a green shirt. Button-up shirt.
You're gonna let the record reflect the witnesses identify the defendant.
So ordered.
Mr. Pacheco, when you got on the scene, what was your task when you got on the scene on 7 o'clock on January 30th?
I met with Sergeant Rodriguez and Sergeant Garcia. Then I saw Deputy Lopez that was standing with the defendant. I was advised that the Criminal Investigation Division, CID, was en route to take over the investigation.
And what were you tasked to do?
I was asked to transfer the defendant down to the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office.
So walk us through, what was your actual job? What did you do?
So I get there, I meet with the deputy. Well, I met with the sergeants, then I met with Deputy Lopez, CID Detective Sergeant Flores arrived and asked me if I could transfer him. After I was asked to transfer the defendant to the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office, I met with Deputy Lopez and I told Mr. Kelly that we were going to transfer him over to the Sheriff's Office. So we removed everything that he had in his property and I placed him in handcuffs, escorted him to my vehicle, and then
Hold on a sec. So you're the one that put Mr. Kelly into handcuffs.
yes,
And when you put into Mr. Handcuffs, how many times have you put people into handcuffs?
countless times.
Countless times. Anything abnormal about putting Mr. Kelly in handcuffs?
No,
And when you put someone in handcuffs, you got to do a body search. You got to take items off of them
yes,
and you inventory. You give them to someone to inventory, right?
yes.
Do you recall what items you took off of Mr. Kelly?
I remember taking off a cell phone, magazine, which contained ammunition, and a pocket knife.
Do you remember what the cell phone was or the magazine?
I do not remember.
So it's basically you're taking things off of a person and just handing them to somebody.
Yes,
And who is standing next to you?
Deputy Lopez.
And you put Mr. Kelly in handcuffs and you took him over to your patrol car.
Yes.
And you put him in the back seat?
No, I put him in the front seat. I tried putting him in the back seat, but he couldn't get into the back seat.
So you put him in the front seat with you?
Yes.
Is that common for Sheriff's Department officers to put detainees in the front seat of their vehicle?
No,
And you transported him to where?
to the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office.
And did he have a coat on?
Yes.
And you transferred him over to the SO office just over here?
Yes.
And you said to CID?
Yes.
Is that pretty much wrap up your involvement in this case?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Who's ever from the defense going to do this cross? We can take our mid-afternoon break now, or you can start for a few minutes, whichever you prefer.
Whatever the court prefers, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead and start.
Okay. You personally put handcuffs on Mr. Kelly, is that correct?
Yes.
And you did that at the scene, is that right?
Correct.
And then you said you tried to put him into the back seat of your patrol car, correct?
Yes.
And you were directed to do that by somebody else, correct?
Yes.
Who told you to do that?
Sergeant Flores.
And so you had no idea at that point why you were arresting Mr. Kelly. Is that right?
I knew they were investigating a death investigation. They were running a death investigation. That's pretty much all I knew.
And so your understanding then is he's being arrested in connection with that investigation, right?
Yes,
And you said you tried to put him into the back seat of the patrol car, correct?
correct.
And that's because he's under arrest, right?
Yes,
That wasn't your decision. That was somebody else's decision, right?
yes.
Okay. And you said he could not get into the back seat. Tell me about that. Why not?
He was having trouble getting into the back seat. I tried helping him, and he started complaining about pain. I don't remember where he said he had pain. So I decided to move him to the front of the seat because he couldn't get into the. I was gonna force him to get into the back of the patrol car because I saw he couldn't get in there.
He's pretty old, right?
Yes,
And so maybe he might have some physical problems that prevent him from sitting in the back seat, right?
correct.
And so you were just trying to help him be able to get transported to the detention center, correct?
That is correct.
Was he asking you about his wife at the time?
He did.
Where was his wife?
She was being transported to the sheriff's office as well by another deputy.
And was that something else that you were directed to do or that the other deputy was directed to do?
Yes,
Transport her to the detention center as well, right?
yes,
And you have no idea why she's being arrested at that point either, correct? Okay. But they're both being arrested. They're both being taken in to do interviews. Is that correct?
correct.
Do you have any idea why nobody came out to the scene to interview them at the scene?
I do not know.
No idea. And you have no idea who was going to conduct those interviews, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That was your initial involvement in the case. That was on January 30th. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you also receive a phone call at some point in connection with this case?
All right, well, it sounds like you're moving into a new area.
Yes.
So let's take our mid-afternoon break. We'll be back in about 30 minutes. It's about 3:15. We're in recess until 3:15.
We should just send her a clip of what she just did. She just asked a question and then repeated it and then repeated it. And then Jen just says, is that right? Is that right? Is that right? That way she can work on her stuff. Please don't send me clips of things I say wrong. No. I'm talking about critiquing other people. Okay. So this one, it looks like
All right, everyone's here. We can bring in the jury, please.
an hour left, but we still have the media thing to do as well. That's why it looks so short today. It's not.
Please rise. Everyone, please be seated. The record will show the presence of all the jurors, counsel, and the defendant. The witness is back on the witness stand. Ms. Larkin, whenever you're ready, you can resume your cross-examination.
Still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And before I get into this phone call that you took shortly after this incident, I just want to kind of back up a little bit and describe everybody's role in this investigation. My understanding is that you just showed up to help out because they were a little bit short-handed or whatever, and they wanted you to help out with some small tasks. Is that right?
Yes.
So you didn't have a big involvement in this case, correct?
That is correct.
Do you know who was the detective assigned to take on this case?
Detective Vainza.
Okay. And so he's the lead detective, right?
I only spoke to Sergeant Flores that night, and I did the transport for Mr. Kelly.
No, my question is just, is Detective Einsa the lead detective for this investigation?
Yes,
And as the lead detective, is he the one who's responsible for reviewing whatever information comes in relating to this investigation?
yes,
Okay. And so I want to get to this phone call that you received on January 31st. So this is the day after your initial involvement, correct?
yes,
And that's a phone call that you took and you documented, correct?
yes,
And that presumably got sent on to the lead detective so that he could review and evaluate this phone call, correct?
I provided that information to his supervisor, Sergeant Flores.
Okay. So this phone call that happens on January 31st, is this approximately 8 o'clock that you received this phone call?
Yes,
And this is a phone call from somebody who calls himself Miguel, is that right?
correct.
And Miguel is a person who's calling and claiming that he was a witness to these events, correct?
Yes,
He claimed he was there and he claimed that he saw what happened, correct?
yes,
And did he make the claim that the person who was shot was his uncle?
yes,
So that's what Miguel stated. This person who was shot, that was my uncle, right?
yes,
Did he also state that this took place at a location called Broken Spring?
I don't believe he gave me a location.
If you were to review a transcript of that phone call, would that help refresh your recollection about what he told you?
Yes,
All right. Let me just pull that up real quick. Can we just show the witness what I'm looking at? And I'm going to scroll to the reference. I'm showing you for the record what's been marked as Defense Exhibit CCC. I'm looking at page 3, and if I could show you, or excuse me, page 1. And if you could take a look at line 1 through 6, or line 6, I'm sorry. Let me find it. I might have pulled up the wrong one. Give me one moment. Oh, that should be the right one. Oh, there it is. Okay. Page 2, pardon me. So page 2, line 5 through 6. Did he refer to this location as Broken Spring?
I did not.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Michael, is this a transcript with Officer Sergeant Pacheco?
Yes.
Can he identify it first?
Oh.
Can
Do you recognize this transcript?
I do not.
Okay. Did you have a phone call with this person named Miguel?
I did.
Do you know if anybody else had a phone call with this same person?
Dispatchers did.
Dispatchers did. Did you receive any information from dispatch regarding what was said by Miguel?
They had information.
And then did you eventually pick up a phone call from him?
Yes,
So you did speak directly to Miguel at some point, is that correct?
I did.
And you documented this phone conversation in your report, correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And Valeria, we can take that off right now. We can take it off. We don't need anything on there. And do you remember this person telling you that his uncle, who was the person who was shot, that his uncle was shot in the chest? Do you recall him saying that to you?
Can I look at my report so I can refresh my
Sure.
memory?
Let me pull up the correct one. Give me one moment. I think I've got it right here. Let me just see. All right. Oh yeah, he can see this one. Let me make sure I get you to the right spot. Is that your report? Can you see it in front of you?
Yes, this is my report.
Okay. And can you tell me, do you remember if he said that his uncle got shot in the chest? Do you recall that?
Yes,
Okay, so he said that. And did he say that that was with a pistol?
yes, he said it was a handgun.
Okay. And he said very clearly this was a handgun and this person shot my uncle in the chest. Is that right?
That's what my report said, yes.
Okay. And then did he state that after this, or that there was a group around when this took place?
Yes, he said he was in a group.
Okay, so it wasn't just him and his uncle by themselves when this happened, right?
According to him, no.
He's claiming that he's with a group,
Yes.
right? And did he also say that he hid in the area for a while after this took place before going back into Mexico?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And as far as you know, when you were on scene, nobody else was in the area, correct?
I didn't go to scene. I just went to the immediate area where the house was at.
Okay. Did he provide a name for the alleged victim?
I'm gonna review my report real quick.
Sure. And if I need to scroll, tell me and I can scroll for you.
Why don't you help them out and direct them to a particular paragraph and page? So
A, she doesn't know, and B, he can just read the whole thing.
I think it's in the transcripts. But you don't recognize the transcripts that
No,
that I
they're-
showed you?
Yeah, those are not mine.
Describe to me how this phone call.
He mentioned, as per my report, it doesn't say a name. He was saying my uncle. He referred to him as my uncle.
Okay. So he just said, and he described himself as being Miguel. Is that correct?
Yes,
Did you describe this person as, I think you note in your report that it seems that he could not speak freely.
yes.
Could you describe that a little bit? What did you mean by that?
He said, I asked him if he could meet me at the port of entry so we can talk to investigators. And he said he was a safe house and he couldn't get there to the port of entry.
Do you know what he meant, or did you ask him what he meant when he said he was in a safe house?
No, I did not.
Okay. And did you hear voices in the background when you were talking with this Miguel person?
No, I did not.
You didn't hear any of that?
No.
Did you have a bad connection with him when he called?
Yes.
Okay, so the phone call was kind of cutting in and out when you were speaking with him, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you make arrangements to try to go meet with him at the port?
Yes.
And how did that go? Describe what happened there.
I asked him if he can make his way to the port of entry so we can meet with him. And he said he didn't know how to get there. So I gave him instructions on how to get to the port of entry and what to do if he was to get to the port of entry. And I went down and I spoke to the supervisor on shift that night. And I advised him there's a possibility of a male subject that's going to come in, that he's a witness to ongoing investigation.
Okay. And he never showed up, is that right?
To my knowledge, he didn't.
Okay. So you have no idea whatever happened with this person who called himself Miguel, who said he was a witness.
I have no idea.
Okay. And this was in the early stages of the investigation, right?
Yes.
So body gets reported January 30th. You receive this phone call the following day, right?
Correct.
So this is in the middle of an ongoing investigation, correct?
Yes.
And the information that you collected from this Miguel person presumably makes its way to Detective Ainsa. Is that correct?
Yes.
And for example, so you're not in charge of this investigation. You're not tasked with determining whether what Miguel said was true or not true. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You're not in charge with determining whether Miguel might be coming forward to make a false report, right?
Correct.
But presumably, the folks who are in charge of this investigation are going to evaluate that, right?
Yes.
They're going to evaluate any statement of any person who comes forward in this case, right?
Correct.
And so they're going to look at these statements and they're possibly going to compare the statements to the physical evidence in the case, for example, right?
Correct.
And they're possibly going to compare these statements with other statements from other witnesses in the case also, correct?
Yes.
And so, for example, just as an example, if Miguel says that his uncle was the person who was deceased, and then if investigators later find out that the deceased person did not have a nephew named Miguel, that would be something the detectives would evaluate, right?
Correct.
And they would take that information in and make determinations about how credible this information is that's coming to them, right?
That is correct.
And same thing, for example, if Miguel said, as he said to you, that the deceased was shot in the chest with a small handgun, they're going to look at that statement and compare it to the physical evidence in the case, right?
Oh,
Correct.
come on.
And if that physical evidence shows that this person was not shot in the chest and he was not shot by a handgun, they're going to use that information to evaluate Miguel's statements, right?
Correct.
And if it turns out that Miguel's
Judge,
statements
please.
maybe don't match up with other statements
They're
or don't
gonna
match up with
investigate
physical
that, right?
evidence, that might be a red flag that this could be a false report, right?
Correct.
And the detectives are going to concern themselves with that, right?
Yes.
And are they
Because
going to
obviously
investigate it?
a homicide investigation is very serious, right?
Yes.
And if there are people who are coming forward who might be providing false statements, the detectives are going to take that very seriously, right?
Yes.
And somebody who comes forward to make a false statement in a homicide investigation is himself committing a crime, right?
Correct.
False reporting to law enforcement's a crime, right?
Yes.
And obviously, if somebody's making false statements to law enforcement about a crime, and that person's also claiming to have been there at the scene of the crime, that's highly suspicious, right?
It could be yes.
That person could be treated like a potential suspect, right?
Depends on the investigation. Like I said, I just took the phone call and
Right. And I
The
know you didn't
detectives-
do the
yeah,
investigation.
detectives are gonna do whatever they have to do on follow-ups. I just took the call and I passed down the information to the sergeant for the criminal investigations. I don't know what led and transpired from that phone call.
And it's the detective's job to follow up and follow those leads and see where that investigation takes them, correct?
Yes.
And to investigate it, right?
And just to be clear, certainly anybody who admits to being at a crime scene is somebody who should be investigated and looked at seriously, right?
Yes.
I don't have anything else, Your Honor.
Thank you. Redirect from the state.
Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Good afternoon.
Let me start off with, you don't know what hearsay is, do you?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
What is hearsay?
Should say it's something that somebody else is saying and they take into consideration that it did happen and they feed off from that hearsay.
We'll let that go. That was kind of, I don't want to trick you. That's
Okay.
not, but anyway, I just want to ask you a question about this report because your involvement was at the scene, just so I understand, preliminary was to detain Mr. Kelly and transport him to CID,
Yes.
right? And you removed items from him,
Yes.
right? And you also said something, just so I want to make sure I understand this clear. Do you know whether or not Miss Wanda Kelly was arrested?
She was not arrested.
And how do you know that?
She was taken to
I'm gonna
the
object
sheriff's
as to-
office.
The objection is vagueness as to time. I don't know if he's talking about ultimately arrested or arrested on scene.
Okay, sustained. You can clarify, try and clarify.
On scene
On
at the
scene-
time when you were there.
On scene, she was not arrested. She was transported to the sheriff's office for questioning, not under arrest.
We jump to this phone call. Obviously, you were there on January 30th.
Yes,
Were you? I mean, you're in Nogales on January 31st, the next day.
yes,
Was this, if you know, was this story covered in the news?
it is covered. It was covered in the news.
Did you see it on the next day news?
I did.
Let's talk about this report. And if you want, do you want me to, I do things old school. Can I refresh your recollection with the report?
Yes, please.
I'm going to show you Government Exhibit 1.12. And you know, I don't want you to read it. I just want you, if you need to refresh your recollection, detective or sergeant.
Yes.
All right. I don't want you to read. I just want you, well, we'll refer to it if you need to refresh your recollection. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Was there mention in that call that this is a report that you wrote with this individual named Miguel,
Yes.
right? And you remember the date of that report?
Yes.
What's the date of the report?
January 31st,
The next day.
2023.
I'm sorry.
I was just giving you the date of 2023.
Okay. And what time of day was that?
It was 2000 hours, which is 8 p.m.
8 p.m. in the evening.
Yes.
And on that, I'm going to refer to a bunch of things on paragraph 2, but if you don't remember, you can refresh your recollection. But
Okay.
is there mention in there of who the alleged shooter is in the incident?
And I'm going to object on hearsay. I understand rule of completeness arguments and such, but if that does come in, I think we would need a limiting instruction that it's not being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
I'm not sure I understand. Can you,
He just asked, is there mention of who the shooter is? Basically asking for a statement from Miguel and apparently offering it for the truth of the matter asserted in the statement. I want to make sure we're not offering the statements as proof of the truth of matter asserted in the
and is
statement.
that different from the reason you offered it?
I didn't offer it for the truth of the matter asserted in the statement.
All right, now I understand. Mr. Jetty.
I'm not going to offer for the truth of the matter. I'm just going to ask for completeness of what the Miguel had reported.
All
And I
right.
think we just need a jury instruction on that.
All right. So, well, so my hearsay explanation to you this afternoon was kind of timely. So remember I said it's something is not hearsay if it's not offered to prove the truth of what the person is saying, if it's offered for some other purpose. So what other purpose are you offering it for? Just to complete
Yes,
the
Your Honor.
conversation?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so sometimes, there's some testimony to something somebody said, and it's only part of something that's part of a larger piece. So to put it more in context, these questions are allowed, so he can answer.
So, Sergeant, is there a reference to who Miguel said shot in this incident?
Yes, there is.
What did your report say?
He said a rancher.
A rancher. Was there also indication of the number of times?
Yes.
What was the indication?
How is that not offered for the truth of the matter asserted?
She's using the defense solicited direct statements from this for what other reason is to get Miguel's statement into testimony. And so if their explanation to you, Judge, is it's not for the truth of the matter, I'm not doing the same thing. I'm doing the same thing here, but they need to have a complete record of what Miguel said. I have no idea why they did it.
Well, go ahead.
And Judge, we obviously offered it to show that there are false statements that are being made that are verifiably false based on the physical evidence. I don't think just describing those false statements opens the door to hearsay in the entire conversation unless there's a non-hearsay purpose to offer other statements for. If we're trying to offer statements to show these are consistent with whatever, then that's hearsay. It's being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted in the statement, and that's not admissible.
Well, a statement by an out-of-court declarant that's offered, that is a statement that incriminates the defendant that he made the shot, is hearsay. The objection sustained. I'm striking the answer. Please ignore the answer.
Let me ask you, is there any indication of time period that this individual evidently waited from the moment of the shots to the moment that person returned to Mexico?
Yes.
Approximately how many hours? You can use your report to refresh your recollection.
Approximately 8 hours from when I responded to the call.
Oh, that's when you responded. But do you know the date? Do you know the time of the shooting in this case?
I do not.
Okay. What was the time that the individual indicated that they returned to Mexico?
It's just 0200 hours. Approximately 2 in the morning.
On January 31st.
Yes.
Is there any indication from this caller about who the victim was?
Yes.
And in that, was there any indication from Miguel that he tried to spell the name of the victim?
He tried to spell his name, the caller. Yes. Not the victim.
Did he spell his name correctly, or?
We had issues trying to get his last name, so no, I don't know how do you spell his last name, to be honest.
And in that report, I just want to emphasize, this is what defense asked you. In that report, the witness said that someone used a handgun,
Yes.
and you passed this report on to someone else, right?
Yes, Sergeant Flores.
Sergeant Flores. And he does whatever he's going to do with it, right?
Correct.
You've almost done. You've handled investigations as a detective,
Yes.
and is it important to gather all evidence?
Correct.
And so if someone calls and says they may have been a witness, that would be important to talk to that person?
Yes.
And you made efforts to talk to this person.
Yes, I did.
And that person didn't show up?
To my knowledge, he didn't show up.
Did he say, let me go back to this because I misunderstood my co-counsel's note. Did he say who he was a nephew of, the name exactly?
No.
And what was his name exactly?
The person I spoke to identified himself as Miguel Boydinea.
Can you spell that last name for me?
Boyctenea.
And do you know the name of the victim in this case?
I do not.
Okay, that's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Jetty. Any questions from any members of the jury for this witness? All right, I see none. Thank you, sir. You can step down. You're excused. State can call your next witness. Yeah, you can give it to him. Thank you. Sir, if you'd step forward to the clerk here, please.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Thank you. If you come over here to the witness stand and have a seat. And whenever you're ready, I presume, Ms. Hunt.
If I could just have a second,
Sure.
I actually thought we were calling another witness. Sorry, Your Honor, I actually wrote a note on my notes for Agent Douglas. Good afternoon, sir. Could you please tell the jury your full name and where you work, please?
Yeah, my name's Daniel Douglas. Last name's Douglass. I'm a FBI agent with the out of the Phoenix division and assigned to the Tucson resident agency. Currently assigned to the Violent Crime Squad.
Sir, could you just tell the jury a little bit about your history? And by history, I mean your employment history.
Sure. I've been working for the FBI since 2008. I started off as a crime analyst and then became a special agent in 2015. As part of being an agent, I've been assigned to cases where I work with forensics on phones and computers. So I've had training on that. I've also had training on various other violent crime investigations.
And can you tell me, in January of 2023, did the Sheriff's Department and the County Attorney's Office from Santa Cruz County reach out to you for some assistance with respect to the George Allen Kelly case?
Oh no, guys.
That's correct.
guys, he left. He ran out of the courtroom quickly. Where'd he go? He's gonna miss some of it.
Reached out asking for assistance with doing some forensic extractions of cell phones, knowing that we had the ability to get those extractions completed.
Was there a specific sheriff member of the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Department that you worked with directly?
Yeah, it was Detective Barbara.
These guys are talking to each other. I can just imagine this conversation with them repeating everything back to each other over and over, and over again.
And perhaps I missed it, but can you tell me which unit you work with?
I'm assigned to the violent crime.
Do you want tea for lunch? Tea? Are you talking about tea? Is that what you said? I just want to be clear. Are you asking if I want tea for lunch? Yes. Do you want tea for lunch? By lunch, do you mean like today? Do you mean food with the tea? What do you mean by lunch? Can you describe lunch? Where are we going to park for this lunch? Let's back up for a second. If you're asking me if I want tea for lunch, does that mean that you have been previously told by other people that I hate tea and now you're trying to attack me? Is that what you mean? That's their conversation.
Crime units. So for Tucson, that covers bank robberies, assaults on federal officers, crimes against children, kidnapping for ransoms, and various other violent crime violations.
And did you agree to assist in the cell phone extractions with Detective Barba?
Correct, I did.
And when did he meet with you regarding the cell phone extractions?
The cell phones were handed over to me to the FBI in
He's back. He only missed a little bit. Maybe we should rewind it for him. Would you like tea for lunch?
April 3rd of 23.
April 3rd of 23?
Correct.
And did Detective Barba tell you whether he had obtained a search warrant for the extractions on those phones?
He did, and provided me a copy of the warrant.
And do you recall how many cell phones you assisted with?
There were 3.
If I showed you the phones, would you recognize them?
I believe so, yes.
I heard from earlier there were some interesting text messages. So maybe something exciting will happen with this witness. Maybe we'll see some text messages between him and his friends, Georgie Porgy and his friends.
what's been marked as State's Exhibit 77. Could you take a look at that and see if you recognize it?
Yeah, this looks like the iPhone that was provided to me.
And can you tell me, did you attempt to extract that iPhone?
I did, was unable to because the iPhone was encrypted and password protected, so we could not get into the phone.
Good job, Kellys. You should do that. For safety reasons, not for hiding from law enforcement.
State's Exhibit 76. Can you take a look at that item?
I mean, it appears to be the phone that it's in a case, but I do recognize the case. I can't see the phone that's inside of it, obviously.
Okay, and do we have a pair of scissors at the desk there?
No, there's no scissors.
Just bite it.
It's okay to open the phone.
Yes, please.
Does anyone have a Band-Aid to give him as well?
Correct, yeah, this is the Alcatel flip phone I examined.
And were you able to do a download on that phone?
I was able to do a limited extraction on this phone. I could get videos and photos, could not get any call detail records or text messages or anything off the phone.
And when you completed that limited extraction, what did you do with it?
Generated a report and put that report on a DVD and provided that to the Detective Barba.
And so you handed that off to Detective Barba?
Correct.
And then you said you were only able to provide a limited extraction on that phone. Did you make any recommendations to Detective Barba after you completed the extraction on the Alcatel flip phone?
I did. I recommended that he physically review the phone so he could read the text messages that were on the phone, since the Celebrite that I used to extract it could not pull the messages.
Could you explain to the jury why the Celebrite you used could not extract those text messages?
I can't say, I mean, in generalities, usually probably for this phone, the Cellbrite is a company that's going to build extractions for the most popular phones that are out there, right? Androids and iPhones. This particular flip phone is
100
somewhat
years
dated,
old.
and they probably just haven't built a report to be able to pull the extract. There's not enough of those phones in circulation to make it monetarily worth it for Cellbrite to create the extraction for that device.
And just so we're clear, Exhibit 76, that's the Alcatel flip phone we were talking about?
Correct.
And does that have an item number on it?
I cut through it and I can't read it now, ma'am. Should have asked that 4 minutes ago.
I can see an item number, but it's possibly either 12 JA.
12JA?
Mhm.
Okay,
There's-
thank you.
Yep.
And then did you perform a Celebrite extraction on another item as well?
I did. There was a Android device.
And can you take a look at State's Exhibit?
Sorry, I'm distracted because it's a little boring. This right here and this right here, if you see it, this camera right here is for this box right here. And this one right here, you can barely see it, is for the judge. And we know this because when this door opens and closes, this box shakes. And when this one opens and closes, this box shakes. But this door must be more, I don't know. This door shakes this camera too. This door, not so much, or I haven't noticed it as much, but maybe I shouldn't be looking at the cameras and I should be focusing on the trial. Sorry.
81 in front of you?
Yeah.
And can you tell us what item number it has on it?
16.3 JA.
Here we go. Someone's coming in. Watch the cameras shaking.
Okay,
Could
if
you
I
go ahead
open
and
this,
open it, please?
He stopped it with his foot. Usually the bailiff stopped.
I recognize this is the Android phone that I examined.
And were you able to do a Cellbrite extraction on that phone?
I was.
And on that Cellbrite extraction, what types of information were you able to download?
I was able to do a logical and a file system, two extractions, which was able to pull call detail records. It would have pulled any location data that was available on the phone. Would have pulled pictures and videos and any voicemails that were saved on the phone. The only thing that the Cellbrite could not pull, I believe this phone had a WhatsApp application. Cellbrite had not built the capabilities to extract directly from that application, so I was able to use take screenshots through the Cellbrite program and provide those in the report as well.
When you told me a minute ago, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but you told me a minute ago with Exhibit 76, that Alcatel flip phone, that you recommended Detective Barba do a physical review of that phone. Could you explain to the jury, you said a little bit about looking at the text messages. What do you mean by that?
I just power the phone on and literally go through each message on the phone and take whatever investigative notes you needed to take on that device.
And would you recommend that they take pictures as well?
Correct. Yeah, anything to memorialize.
And during your examination of Exhibit 81, were you able to pull location data for cell phones or for photographs?
I don't recall.
Okay. Were you able to recall dates for photographs?
I don't recall that either. I didn't particularly, since I was just extracting the information on the phone and I wasn't the case detective on the case. I wasn't reviewing the devices for content, if that makes sense.
So you were just doing the extraction and then providing it to the detective to do the analysis?
Correct, yeah. If it was my own case, I would have done it as I was going, but since I wasn't the case agent, I was just performing the forensic extraction. That's all I did.
I want to ask you, did you provide some other additional information to Detective Barba in just sort of an advisory capacity?
He had called me regarding a geofence warrant and some questions about, I think he was asking why a device wouldn't be in a geofence. I believe he was talking about a Google geofence at the time. And I listed off the possible reasons why a device that you thought would show up wouldn't show up in a Google geofence.
Can I stop you for a second
Sure.
before you get into that? Could you explain to the jury what a Google geofence is? Because I'm sure they're all wondering what that means.
So a geofence is you'll use some lat long coordinates and you'll draw it in the shape of the area that you want to submit to Google, and with the hope of getting any Android device or Android device or anybody using an Android service that would be in that geographical location. For instance, in my line of work, I use them a lot in bank robberies. I'll draw a geofence around a bank that I know that got robbed with a date, time, and the coordinates around that bank to try to get any cell phones that were in the area of that bank robbery at the time of the robbery.
And so you started to talk about a Google geofence warrant. Can you explain what that means, a Google geofence warrant?
Yeah, so they, I don't know the particular area that they were submitting the warrant on, but there you would use, provide your lat long coordinates of the shape of whatever you wanted to capture devices in, and then you would submit that to Google, and they would return any device that was active. So the device would have had to been powered on. It would have had to have location sharing on. It would have had to have some privacy settings set correctly. It would have had to have been getting connection to some type of network via Wi-Fi or a tower, cell tower. And then Google would have returned any of the devices that met that criteria that were inside that lat long area that was provided.
So are you saying that you'd like draw an area, a square around an area, for instance, and then whoever's phone's on that meets that criteria, it's going to pop up as their phone being in that location?
That's correct.
And then is that an investigative tool you can use to locate potential witnesses, potential suspects, that sort of thing?
Correct.
And you started to say that the detective called you to find out why perhaps nothing appeared on a warrant. And could you tell the jury what the possible reasons are, perhaps specifically in a remote location,
Sure.
why you might not have anything pop up on a geofence warrant?
Well, so there's multiple things that would prevent it. If you were using let's say you're using an iPhone and you had no Google services on that phone, you weren't using Gmail, you weren't using any type of Google application, that's not going to pop in a Google geofence warrant. This flip phone, for instance, probably wouldn't pop because I can't think of any Android services that would run on that. It's not a smartphone. It's not going to have applications, right? And then for an Android phone itself, if it's not connected to a cell tower because you're in such a remote location, or if the cell tower that's servicing that remote location is only providing cell service and not data service, if you're not, you can make phone calls, but you can't get email, you can't connect to the internet, right? So that would limit it. And again, if the phone itself doesn't have the privacy settings open enough that Google actually captures that cell phone, that would prevent it as well.
All right, thank you. That's all I had.
Any cross-examination?
Just real briefly, when you get the extraction, the Cellbrite extraction, if there is a date and time stamp on something, what time measurement is reflected?
Typically, I don't even want to say typically without looking at the report, but the report will tell you what time it's reflecting. So it'll either reflect UTC, most likely.
Okay, and if this one reflected UTC, could you just tell us the difference between UTC time and Arizona time?
UTC is Universal Time Code. It's the Greenwich Mean Time. Typically, Arizona is 7 hours behind that.
Does daylight savings affect that at all? Arizona doesn't switch.
Arizona doesn't switch, but
But UTC does.
UTC does. So usually when I'm converting times, I usually use a web page that will convert the times for me for the current time of the year.
Would around January of 2023, let's say it's 4 o'clock UTC time, what time would that be Arizona time?
I would, again, without using the application for sure, I wouldn't want to say.
What's your best approximation? I'm not going to hold you to it,
Sure.
but best approximation.
What time did you say?
4 p.m. UTC time.
Yeah, I would subtract 7 hours from that, give or take an hour.
Okay. That's all I had, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, any questions for this witness from members of the jury? Very well. Thank you, sir. You may step down, your excuse.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's, you want to get on the headsets? Okay, let me get.
That was quick. Whoa.
We're going to recess a little early today at 4 o'clock. This has nothing to do with the fact that you all might be in a sugar food coma, okay? Yeah, what you have. But it's Friday, and it's not a bad idea to finish a little bit early anyway. So we finished another week. Remember the admonition of the court. It's just as important as it ever was. I'm not going to go through it all again. We will resume trial next Tuesday. I think that's April 9th at 8:30 in the morning. Do any of you have any questions? Oh, by the way, I've been talking with the lawyers here and there, and things are, I assume, still moving on schedule and planned schedule. Is that more or less right?
More or less.
More. All right. So, but things are moving well. I think we're pretty much on schedule. So that being said, I'm going to stay here with the lawyers, have a little talk with them. Have a great weekend. You're excused, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 8:30. Okay. Okay, you can have a seat. This won't take long. So the jury is absent, counsel is still present. And so where are we on the progress? And the reason I'm asking, I want to know generally, but also we're in the process of starting the planning for what I anticipate will be a visit to the alleged crime scene. So, reservations, trucks, cars, and that kind of thing. So how are we doing on the state's case?
We have four witnesses remaining, and so seven, but three are real brief. And so we're looking at now probably throughout the entire day of Wednesday, and so we got Tuesday and Wednesday, and so we hope we don't bleed into Thursday, but we're Tuesday, Wednesday.
All right, well, that's consistent with you had estimated before. All right, very well. Then if there's nothing further. Everybody have a good, safe weekend, and we'll see you either Monday at the hearing the court has scheduled or Tuesday at 8:30.
All right. Okay, we finished day 9. We start day 10 next. And now I think it gets more exciting because we get more views. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for coming out. I'm excited to see what happens next. Maybe we'll see some of those text messages that I heard that he sent his friends. Remember at the beginning, they were talking about some text messages. I think they said it in their opening statements. If you don't remember, go back and watch the opening statements, or just wait and you'll see all the testimony. The only bad part is we can't see the text messages. We don't have a screen for it to pop up on, so we can't see the text messages, but I have a suspicion that the lawyers are going to repeat the text messages over and over and over again. So we should be fine, guys. Thanks for coming out. I really, really, really appreciate it. Have a great day, guys. Bye.